Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Elimination Chamber post show. John Pollock waiting once again, live from Montreal, inside of our hotel room. That waiting has just, if he could move here, he wouldn't. That's the review.
Oh, man, it's I've had a great time here in Montreal, but this hotel, it looks nice. I'm sure in this camera shot, what could be wrong with this? Look at this beautiful blue wall, that picture of
Nice little accent with the light.
things, that hot fire alarm. But the one thing I would say any hotel room needs is a working drain in the bathtub, or standing shower in this case. But man, it's that's been an issue.
In fairness, they never advertised that. I mean, that was not one of the amenities that we looked at when booking this.
I'm a guy
hotel.
who likes my showers, especially in this climate in Montreal. It's a very wet and slushy Montreal.
You got about 4 minutes, and then it's full, and then you got to get out.
Yeah, I've been like walking in like pools in my Clarks. I made a terrible choice of shoe for this walking trip.
You've been a trooper, but
Terrible.
when we have checked in with you.
Soaked socks, all day long. Only thing I can look forward to at the end of the night is a nice warm shower, and even that is not really possible. So
Wade
it's okay,
has
John.
also complained so many times.
I don't know who's more disappointed tonight, me or Sami Zayn.
Yeah. Well, you both feel strange. The word is strange.
Strange, very strange. Yeah, how are you?
I'm okay. We're coming back from the show tonight. The New Japan Battle in the Valley show is going on as we speak. We have just wrapped up Eddie Kingston and Jay White. So intermittently, we may be checking in with that show. So off the top, if there's something newsworthy, we will be addressing it. But I guess the most significant is the fact that CM Punk is there in the media section, I guess. We have been detained with the WWE show, but I will let people know that Sunday on the Post Wrestling Cafe, WH Park and Karen Peterson will have a thorough review of Battle in the Valley.
All right, cool. I look forward to that. So spoiler. We'll give some spoiler warnings throughout, and if we want to address any results. But I know some of you guys are watching that right now, so I'm sure if you're trickling in or if you've already seen it, then great.
So we're gonna go at least from the main event and talk about that first. More so the outcome, which saw Roman Reigns retain the WWE Championship, pinning Sami Zayn in Montreal. We had run-ins by both Usos, and at the end, it was Kevin Owens making his triumphant return at the end of the night. This is after the loss by Sami Zayn, and the two kind of just gave a look to each other, and that was that. Do you want to describe our setup for the main event?
The hesitation from John there was I maybe partially because he forgot what he had just seen. It also could have been because he didn't see what was happening.
I didn't forget anything.
Yeah. Listen, it's great coming here to. I feel like I'm just complaining on this show. I really shouldn't because I've had a great trip, but unfortunately, our main event review is going to be a bit hampered because we couldn't see shit. We had to get ready to go into the back for this press conference, and so we were escorted from our seats.
They rounded everybody up to go to this corridor to be ready to be escorted to the press conference area. And this was at the start of the main event, about a minute or two into the match. And we're taken to this area, and we're just on the floor. And of course, people on the floor, they're standing, and it is literally just struggling to see anything in the ring that's going on. So, I mean, I think we're going to be talking more about the outcome, the reaction from that.
It sounded awesome. Sounded like an incredible main event, which, I think it's a perspective that we can give. Unfortunately, I don't think you should rely on this review for a full rundown match, move by move, of the main event. It's a match I'll probably have to rewatch. So.
Yeah, I mean, I got a fair amount of notes for it, but it was a struggle, and it's like I don't have like a solid read on the match itself, but I feel the outcome supersedes the bell to bell content. But
and Ryan asking, no TVs. There are no screens.
None.
No screens available. Usually, like, in these sort of hockey arenas, in the center of the arena is like a screen facing each direction. Did not have any of that.
The big screen just has the big Elimination Chamber logo. So it was, you either saw the live in-ring perspective or you did not see anything.
Yeah.
So that was sort of our vantage point for the main event, which was limited. But it was certainly, of the press conference, if you watched it, I think the most interesting was Sami Zayn, who came out afterwards, and you could see, like, legitimately deflated, understanding how big this match had been and likening it to George St. Pierre coming back to the Bell Center and losing. Might have been a great fight, but losing the big fight. And this has been the discussion, the whole lead up to this match, is you have caught lightning in a bottle with Sami Zayn while you also have another plan for WrestleMania. And do you pivot? Where do you go? And the answer here was staying the course and hoping that this audience left satisfied. But timing is everything in this industry. And for performers to reach this, like, this is the peak. This is something you work towards, having this perfect confluence of character build, storyline progression in your hometown, challenging for the title, numbers moving in your direction. That is all fuel for what all of these performers are under the impression are the difference makers that will get me to that top echelon. And time will tell if this has cemented Sami in a main player role, or if it was the wrong finish on the wrong day when this audience you had to be here in this city to sense the buzz for this. Like, there's times you hear about, it's a big feel for this. You could certainly feel it at the various points of just the limited time that we were here this week. And this was an audience that loved Sami Zayn on these two nights. And the question will be, is this one of those finishes that ultimately will be remembered as the night that you beat the guy on a night that it was just the wrong loss on the wrong night?
Right. Yeah. This is a point of debate that has been going into this weekend, and it's one that I had even myself kind of resigned, to understand that there's a plan for WrestleMania, and Cody has been doing really well, and I did not expect this outcome to not happen tonight. I was expecting it. I'll tell you when it changed. And I think when I started to doubt, honestly, it was probably over the course of the weekend, and it was definitely over the course of the evening, seeing how special this reaction was, how loud this reaction was. And, Cody could do just as well in a WrestleMania, and there are other factors to selecting Cody for that role. But these sort of reactions, I think, are very, very rare, and for some performers, once in a lifetime. And you just wonder, especially at the end, if it was squandered, and you wonder if it could be replicated again. And I don't know, and it would be a real shame because, going into tonight, I didn't think Sami would win, but I had wondered if they would have been able to create a finish that would have felt triumphant, even if technically he does not win the belt. And it does not affect the main event of WrestleMania with Cody and Reigns. And from what I was able to peek to see of the finish, and from what I could see of the reaction in the arena, I would say I don't think they achieved that. I think you left a lot of audiences disappointed. And I just wonder if there was another way. Maybe there wasn't another way. Maybe this was the best that they could have done. But, they certainly weren't going to pull the trigger of him actually winning the championship.
I never imagined that would be the outcome. Certainly, the audience bit big on all the key near falls. It was like this was a crowd they were ready to explode if he won. I would say the ending, in my mind, was if you pull off the Kevin Owens involvement properly, it's a gigantic pop at the end of the night, and it maybe does not replace a title win, but is enough of a high for this audience to leave on. I think maybe they achieved some of that, but again, from where we were situated, to me, it just felt like whether it was I was in my mind, the idea was it's this huge return for Kevin Owens, place explodes, and then the final moment is the two of them just staring at one another, and then you get the big hug and the place goes nuts. And we didn't get that, and it felt as though it's cool, Kevin is here, we know they're going in a direction, but it felt as though it was, as Sami Zayn outlined it, it felt like the crowd left sad.
Yeah.
Not mad, sad. And sometimes that's maybe a worse emotion to have. Not that this kills the city. I think that they have learned that, man, Montreal is a major market for them. But I'm hoping it's eye-opening that they realize that two of the key reasons that this market is so hot were in that ring to end the show for them.
Sure, certainly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, like, these guys are talented enough that I think they could build up to another moment like tonight. But, even that's a big if. You had so many, like, perfect things colliding at the same time. The fact that this storyline is peaking at this point, and the fact that this happened to be in Montreal on a night on an event date that had followed a big drought for Montreal after the pandemic. Will they be able to capture the potential of this moment again? And did they squander it? You wonder if this was not in the lead up to WrestleMania. I don't know if this was in October, I think you make that decision pretty clearly. I feel like, what would you think? Let's just throw that hypothetical out. If we had reached this climax, if the show was in Montreal, let's say in September of last year, do they make the title change?
I mean, it's tough to go back because at that point the program has not heated up to.
So let's say if the program was this hot. If everything was the same, except WrestleMania is not next month.
I mean, it's not even that weird. Like, this is the discussion we did have last September with Drew McIntyre. And I think, there was the argument that that was a big moment for Drew McIntyre. It wasn't all that different. Like, you had a huge stadium show that was ready for Drew to win, and they stuck with the plan of Roman just rolling over everybody. But I would say in this, it might have, I would have argued that if this were in September and this is in Montreal, you pull the trigger on this with Zayn. And Roman, to me, he's had the dominant run. To me, another month of this title reign does not make it bigger. It's already a huge thing. And Roman could have, what I was saying about Drew last summer was Drew could win this and hold it until the Rumble, and then Roman wins it back, and you go into Mania, and that gives something really big for Drew. He's the one that ends the long run of Roman Reigns, and he gets the big moment. He gets a semi-run with the title, and if you're fixated on Roman going into Mania, he can get the title back, and I would have said the same for Sami Zayn. So, and I am sure that, this, I'm sure, was a really intriguing week for Sami Zayn, and weighing all of this and how many of those, key decision makers in the company their eyes were opened. If you go back to 2006, this was when John Cena had a long title run. The audience is starting to turn on Cena, so they wanted to freshen things up, and they put the belt on Edge. But it was, you're winning the title, you're cashing in Money in the Bank, and you're losing it in 4 weeks. And in those 4 weeks, Edge started to move numbers. He started to have a real impact as a fresh champion, first time with the title, and that impact was being seen. And the argument was, let's ride the hot hand. But the counter was, Cena is the plan. Cena is the long-term guy, so they had Cena win the belt back. And that was debated at the time. Edge felt hot, but the silver lining was Edge was a made guy after. They saw him as a money player after that 4-week run. And then later down the road, he did get more. He was a main event guy from that point onward. So while it was a blip or he had to drop the title after 4 weeks, the long term was he greatly benefited his standing in the company. Will that happen with Sami? We'll see. These 2 nights were huge for this company. They did their Montreal gate record on Saturday. This was an enormously successful event for the company, and this is not one of those just the WWE brand sold this show. It was you had the magic of a hometown babyface star in the city where I would argue it's one of the most effective hometown babyface regions in North America, in Montreal, that has such a history of getting behind its own, and in this case, it was their own going for the championship. And look at what the end result was.
Yeah. I mean, did he do enough already? I think send that message to the people in charge. I think the circumstances of this particular event being on this date made it probably a lot more difficult for them to even give him
But
that
25 years
run.
from now, it's not going to be. Do you remember where you were the night that Sami Zayn went for the title at Elimination Chamber? Yeah, the night he lost. Like, I don't think it's not going to be that memorable all-time Montreal wrestling memory. Because the babyface came up short.
Yeah,
and maybe 20 years we'll look back and it was like what a missed opportunity. Or it would be like the Edge comparison, where unfortunate they didn't go with it at that point. They had the Cody direction, but ultimately Sammy was so like he was a money player after that point. We'll see. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, we'll see what the follow-up
This is not Vince, it's Paul Levesque, and it's a very different mindset towards Sami Zayn and how valued he is, and that's obvious. This is not happening a year ago.
Yeah, so I mean, it's looking like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos is my guess.
I would say we have like the key Mania matches seem pretty much set up now, with maybe like a few questions here and there. But I would say out of tonight's show, pretty much the key players are accounted for.
So, hey, a little bit later on, we are going to be taking your phone calls here. If you're joining us live in the Zoom room, or in the YouTube room, I should say, here's the link, and call in after our reviews, okay? So, as we wrap up our review of, the main event here tonight, call in on StreamYard, and you can have your voice heard, or if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe patron, you can write in at forum.postwrestling.com.
How was your day?
That was good.
Day 2 in Montreal.
It was a lot less stressful. Today was spent a lot of it catching up with people in the city. I spent a good chunk of it just resting and chilling out. So I had a good day. How about you?
I wanted to make mention. I got out to a beer market on Saturday afternoon where Pat LaPrade and Kevin Raphael, fans of the show, they were hosting their own live podcast, Le Antipode de la Lutte. Live in person, and so I had been asked to come to this live podcast and to have me on. So I was like, sure, I'll pop by. I didn't really know what to expect at this, so I get there and I am sent to this back entrance behind the stage, and Pat says, "Well, we're gonna bring you on as a surprise guest." I'm like, with all due respect, I don't think I really qualify as a surprise guest here for this French language podcast. And
come on.
so I am brought out, and they have closed down this whole beer market for this show. Wow. It's a private event, and this place is packed. They said there were 200 people here for this podcast. So I come out on stage, and I am just looking at it like this. It blew me away, the amount of people that were there. So it was very cool to go on their show, chat a bit about our site and just everything going into Elimination Chamber. So a shout out to...
I should make note, this is Elimination Chamber and not Extreme Rules, which I had incorrectly titled in the video. So apologies to all of you guys mistakenly thinking that you're watching a review about a different...
What did you think about Bray Wyatt's return? Yes. I mean, it was...
It's been a long day, everybody, so...
it's fine.
There we go.
And also, I met a listener, Robert, at Starbucks, who brought his nephew all the way to Montreal.
We met a few listeners, actually. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, new and old. That we saw Louis, we saw Hansi. Hansi made it out to Montreal.
Yes, he did.
All right. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the show? Do you want to talk about the presser? Where do you want to go?
I think we should start with the show and end with the presser. Yeah.
So the show kicked off. The kickoff, we got there towards the end, but there was nothing on the kickoff to go through. And we started off with the women's chamber match with Asuka, Carmella, Liv Morgan, Natalya, Nikki Cross, and Raquel. Kicking things off was Liv and Natalya, where at one point Natalya's head was put through the fence. Like they got her head like right through it. Raquel was in third. She was doing a bunch of power spots. And then Nikki is in fourth. And her big spot was hitting a high cross off the pod onto the other three women. Carmella followed, and Raquel put Nikki through the pod, and that set up her elimination. Carmella runs into one of the pods to hide, and then Liv hits a super sunset bomb off the pod to Raquel Rodriguez to generate a 2 count. Asuka is the last one in, attacking Carmella. Oblivion gets stopped by Carmella's kick from the outside, and there's a sharpshooter on Liv, and then Asuka joins in with the armbar, so it's a double submission on Liv, and for the third time this week, Liv Morgan submits to Asuka's armbar. This assisted with the sharpshooter, so I don't know if... I think this is just building up Asuka's armbar, and Liv is the victim 3 times this week. Carmella then super kicks Natalya as she has the sharpshooter applied, and Carmella pins Natalya, so the home country favorite is gone. Raquel gets eliminated by Asuka and Carmella double teaming her, and the end sees a series of reversals, and Carmella gets armbarred by Asuka with her new version of the armbar that this match was a lot about building up as the new variation of her finish. Asuka wins, as most, I think, expected, and that will set up Asuka challenging Bianca Belair at WrestleMania.
I thought the match was okay. I don't know if for me it was all that memorable. I thought it was heavily elevated by a really strong crowd reaction that reacted especially well to Asuka and especially well to Liv Morgan.
Yes.
I was kind of surprised by that. Even against
Liv is much more over than she is handled on the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but even against Natalya, who I think, I expected being a Canadian was going to get by far the biggest. I think Liv's reaction certainly rivaled it. The crowd was booing when she was eliminated, and she surprisingly still had a lot of fan support, despite maybe her recent treatment. I thought Carmella being the only heel in the match was effectively used. To me, the match felt like a pretty effective length. There's really no other contender for Asuka, so I don't think they really tried to delay the outcome by unnecessarily drawing the match out for, I think what was going to be a difficult to achieve dramatic moment of a near fall for somebody else other than Asuka. But I thought it was consistently engaging throughout, even, pretty satisfying by the end. So, yeah.
Do you like the Bianca Asuka direction?
I think it's your only choice, I mean, Becky, we don't really know what she's got right now, but Asuka, I think, still has felt refreshed ever since the new face paint and re-debut at the Rumble. Although, I think they still have a bit of a ways to go to make this match feel like it's a WrestleMania worthy match. Right now, it just feels like a championship.
It feels
match.
like the monthly title defense on the pay-per-view. I thought the match was fine. I don't think it stood out in a giant way. There were a handful of moments, the Liv Morgan sunset bomb, that got a big reaction. Anything off the pod was going to get a reaction, and pretty much everything got reactions on this show. This was a very, very easy crowd to please. It was pretty hot throughout the show. George St. Pierre was in the front row. So for a rarity, we had George St. Pierre, Brock Lesnar, and Ronda Rousey under one roof.
Yeah, when would the last time that would have been?
I don't know when you would have had all those 3, because they didn't intersect as much as you would think in terms of their fighting. I'm sure it has happened, but I would.
Is Ronda here? Did Ronda show up tonight? We don't know.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. She actually wasn't on the show tonight, so
she was there last night. So you would presume maybe she would have stuck in town, but
no, that's actually not, probably wouldn't have when you think about it. So anyway, my bad. It's late. Give us a break. It's 1:15. Which takes us to Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. I mean, these matches are just like, it's just sprint, sprint, sprint. It was Brock immediately hitting a suplex. This crowd lost it for Brock.
They could have, like, Brock Lesnar could have put on a bear hug for like 5 minutes. I think Montreal would have still really ate it up. I mean, some of us might be a bit bored of these sprint style matches, but tonight it absolutely worked.
This crowd was not.
Yeah.
This was their video game match of the night. The Hurt Lock gets countered into the first of several F5s. Then he hits a second one to Lashley. Lashley stops a third one and hits the spear. And that's when Way and I are both dumbfounded as the crowd is chanting Bobby Who.
Yeah, they got it. They got the chant over. I mean, God, yeah, it surprised me. Absolutely.
I was, this was the crowd to work your material on and get it over. The Hurt Lock is applied by Lashley, and Brock's only way out is to kick him in the balls. And the DQ is called the lamest finish. But to be honest, this crowd did not care because afterwards Brock killed the ref with an F5. Then another one was delivered to Lashley. Then he put Lashley threw a table on the floor with another one and dumped the ref on the floor as well. So you just got Brock as the crazed animal, and this audience was very forgiving, but this finish sucked.
It sucked, yeah. I mean, when they had announced, or when Bray Wyatt had thrown out the challenge on SmackDown, you and I discussed whether or not they had moved on from the idea of Brock versus Lashley at WrestleMania, and now we can presume three-way.
That's going to be where people assume. This is one of those where, yeah, you at least have the question mark, but that's where you would be led to believe. Like, I don't see many other dance partners for these three.
Yeah, I was expecting a non-finish prior to Friday, but, the moment they announced Bray
this
Wyatt,
was not a creative one, but it was, like, this audience, they did not care with the post-match that they got. It was like, they went nuts for this, and they made it. But I thought it was a really uncreative finish and just really, really dissatisfying.
I wouldn't say, like, they were certainly loud no matter what. So, but I don't know if that necessarily meant that they didn't care. I'm sure people were disappointed as much as we were.
Did you want to see this match in any iteration after?
Well, that's the thing. If you're going to do something to delay, and basically like bait and switch, it better come with a pretty creative and pretty satisfying ending that I would say, especially for Brock Lesnar, who's done pretty spectacular non-finishes in the past. It needed to be memorable, and this was anything but, a low blow out of a Hurt Lock. That's about as basic of an out as you could get. So it turned me off from the feud, and I kind of get that sense from others as well.
Edge and Beth Phoenix against Rhea Ripley and Finn Balor. There was so much heat on Dominic to the point that at times in the match, I felt like Dominic overshadowed parts. Like, this audience was so into getting on to Dominic, like the FU Dominic chants when he was chased to the back by Edge. He's very good at ringside, but to me, it's like he almost took too much of the audience's attention because you're watching him and he was getting all the heat during the match.
Right, yeah. I mean, could be worse problems.
Well, for this one, we saw like it was a well laid out match. I thought Beth stopped a riptide, and then Beth was run into the corner, and we see a superplex by Beth and the big tag to Edge. Both Edge and Beth applied executions onto the opponents, and then Beth ends up taking a headbutt, and Balor gets rolled on top, and Beth is late to the save, and so Edge didn't really get his shoulder up, so that one it was a little flat with the near fall. Beth then nails Dominic onto the rope from the floor, and this knocks Balor off balance off the top. And we see Ripley and Beth deliver double power bombs to the men, which got over. Glam Slam was hit to Rhea Ripley on the floor, and then Edge speared Dominic off the apron, runs into a sling blade, and then comes back with a spear. And it is Beth and Edge finishing Balor with a big rig, and which they had never tried before, and they had Edge pin Balor.
Yeah, in the press conference they called it the Shatter Machine, but yeah, fans in AEW now know it as FTR's Big Rig. Of course, very close personal friends of the two of them, and maybe help them train for this, perhaps even. So
the emergency contact when someone is breaking into the house for Edge to call.
That is correct. Yeah. So I really like that shout out to FTR. Good match. I mean, heightened, I would say, by the crowd throughout, and it was a match that was primarily featuring the women in Rhea Ripley and Beth Phoenix. And I thought they did great together. I mean, their showdown was very much kind of presented as a dream match between like two equals, two female wrestlers who have surpassed, I would say, maybe the limitations of what's expected of them in their divisions. And I thought they presented like a really good, compelling dream match. I thought Beth looked great,
Does it leave it with, is there enough that you want to see Edge and Balor coming out of this? Because that was one thing with the finish is like beyond just, Balor does the promo once and for all, we're going to have the final showdown at WrestleMania. I guess you could do. Is there any other option for
Balor
Edge?
and Edge? I think, like, remind me, have they had that one-on-one? Like, was that
That was the
best?
Extreme Rules match.
Yeah. So I feel like they need a stipulation to kind of really like add a bit of juice to it. Just a flat out rematch. I don't know if it's got enough of that sizzle for WrestleMania, especially.
They are coming out of this where it's going to be Austin Theory against Edge for the U.S. title on Monday in Ottawa. So you will have the Canadian going for the U.S. title in Canada.
Yeah, it's happened. Plenty of times. Yeah. Did we? The bigger question when it comes to Edge is, did we see his last Canadian pay-per-view match? And will WrestleMania be his last WrestleMania?
That was the question everyone had for him afterwards, going back to the Raw promo in August that he gave to the live crowd in Toronto, where he was certainly hinting about, retirement and seeing like the end and where things are. And
and in the press conference, he had said that he didn't want to make any definitive decisions.
Yeah, I'd be very curious, like when, the next deal comes up and, that decision is going to have to be made of like what he is looking to do. And if it's outside interests, whether he has an interest within the company. He did talk a bit about that. We'll get to at the press conference. But the match came off well. It's more so just building up Edge and his WrestleMania program, like what it's going to be. And Balor would seem to be the odd man out in the Judgment Day that doesn't have anything significant planned. Men's Elimination Chamber match. First, we had a Reigns-Heyman promo in the back, which was our C4 Energy commercial, as they had Reigns drinking C4 Energy, which was the sponsor for the main event.
Nice.
You want to try? Right. What would you rather try, C4 Energy or Mountain Dew Pitch Black?
I think Pitch Black. In fact, we were about to stop into a couche-tard here in Montreal to grab one.
You were eyeing the
it was advertised on the
had.
door, but unfortunately at this point the place was closed. So
very interesting that Logan Paul just signed a deal with the UFC for
that's his
energy drink.
Is Prime, I thought.
Prime. So that's the UFC's now official energy drink.
Okay.
And WWE has like this deal for C4,
which are their competitors.
Well, they're all in the energy drink field, but just interesting. We no Prime deal here. I would love to put some C4 into your body and just let it explode. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Men's Elimination Chamber match. So we have Rollins, Gargano, Austin Theory defending the title, Bronson Reed, Montez Ford. Rollins and Gargano started the match, and they had a pretty good start to things here. Theory was in third, and then Priest comes in fourth. We saw him hit a kill switch onto Seth, and
yeah, they did a lot with Rollins and Gargano in there with Theory. I don't know if from what I could tell, it was like Theory sort of like motioning for Gargano to recognize like the past that they had together so that they could work together against Rollins. I don't know if on commentary they would have mentioned that Theory was also like a disciple of Rollins at the same time. So a lot of like story connections between the two, and they ended up being trapped inside a pod together as Rollins and Gargano just like stomped on this guy.
I thought Gargano was very good in the match. It was, he was in this for a good amount of time, had some shining moments throughout it. Rollins hit a superplex, followed up with a Falcon Arrow to Damian Priest. Bronson Reed comes in fifth, and he Germans Priest into the fence and then splashes Priest into the pod. Ford is the last one in, and I was interested to see, because to me it was Bronson Reed and Montez Ford were the two that you would be looking at how they would be handled. And it seemed that the priority was Montez Ford and letting him shine in defeat in this match.
I thought Reed was also a priority as well. Like, I thought he had some, like, he to me stood out more than Ford.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but both of them did.
Ford is coming in and he's immediately delivering the crotch chops. And then Rollins hits a doomsday device to Gargano off the shoulders of Reed, and as Gargano is knocked off, he turns it into a poison Rana onto Bronson Reed, so everyone goes down. Then Ford climbs up the side of the chamber, and everybody's yelling, "Keep climbing," and he does. And the way it curves, Way immediately is thinking of Homicide on that first Monday night edition of Impact. This had a much better, satisfying conclusion because Ford ends up doing like a pull-up onto the roof of the chamber and then rotates himself almost into like a shooting star press, but just comes straight down onto everybody. And this looked nuts.
Yeah,
Very cool spot.
An amazing spot. I thought this would have been the spot of the match, and you can argue it was, but there was at least another contender.
So that was really great. And from there, Ford hit from the heavens and eliminated Bronson Reed. Then we had Seth Rollins lift up Johnny Gargano on the top of the pod for a power bomb. And he goes to powerbomb Gargano off the pod, and it's turned into a Rana in midair, sending Rollins onto the others, and it was actually a pretty safe landing for Rollins. I couldn't see how Gargano landed, but I was trying to see the replay. Hopefully he landed okay, because he was certainly selling that he smashed himself into the bottom. But this was our other crazy spot of the match, and the place went nuts for this one as well. There was one final beat onto Ford onto the steel floor, and then a razor's edge by Priest eliminates Johnny Gargano. From there, we see from the heavens onto the knees of Theory, and as Ford is selling the effects of the knees, he's hit by the stomp, and Theory takes the pin, eliminating Montez Ford. And then they had the trainers come down to check on Montez Ford, thus opening up the cage door that is left open. And with Seth and Theory about to go at it, down runs Logan Paul, who is booed out of the arena, and he's able to enter because the door is open for Montez Ford. And Logan hits a buckshot lariat to Seth Rollins and follows it with a stomp, and Theory hits A-Town down, pinning Seth Rollins to retain the U.S. Championship and send Seth on his path with Logan Paul.
I thought this match was excellent. Several memorable
This was the
spots.
best match I saw on Saturday night.
Yeah, unfortunately. Several, and if you're just tuning in live, scroll back to the beginning and you can hear our explanation about our sight lines for the main event. But I thought this match was great. Several memorable spots. Ford's ceiling splash, Gargano's Rana to Rollins off the pod. I thought they did a great job with Bronson Reed here, essentially having all the baby faces that are lighter weight banding together with several big moments trying to take the man down and finally being able to with all their finishers before taking him out. So I thought Reed came out of this almost feeling like he had like the big man push coming out of a Royal Rumble. So great for him. And I think for Ford,
I thought this was a big elevation of Ford. He comes out of this where I think that you would not structure a match like this for this to just be goes back to the Street Profits. Not to say they're ending the team.
I mean, they've done Ford like big performances in the past, but yeah, are they going to sustain this one? I don't know.
I hope so, because why waste an effort like this? So I thought he came off great in the match. This was a great match from our vantage point. I thought it was a really, really strong chamber match
and good build, like good surprise in Logan Paul coming in and building that match to Seth Rollins. They had laid the groundwork pretty well. I mean, mostly off the show, but like kind of confirming it on Raw. I think it was this week or the week prior. I don't know. And
it's also the 180 for Theory, who was the punchline in last year's chamber match, getting F5'd off the pod by Brock, and just everyone's, he was the punchline in the match. And this year, he runs the gauntlet, keeps the title, and sets himself up to be, strengthening this title run for him.
Yeah.
We should also mention when George St. Pierre was shown on camera, he was next to Ariel Helwani, who we did not hear the commentary, but I guess Michael Cole making a reference to Tony Khan's tweet and calling him the unbiased journalist, and
that something to the effect of, again, I was there live, but I believe the thing was that answers.
Ask
all the hard questions, whether you want to answer them or not. Of course, referencing, subtly referencing Ariel's interview with Tony Khan, and Tony deflecting a lot of those questions.
Was this as blatant a shot at Tony Khan as we've heard on a WWE broadcast? Like they've never even they've never even taken subtle shots at Tony Khan.
Yeah,
this would be the most blatant one I can recall.
But they haven't really had a reason to, I suppose.
No, it was this, like, you got the Pissant Company remark from Paul Levesque, but in terms of like a direct shot at Tony Khan, this would probably be the most transparent one that comes to mind. So a notable remark regardless from Michael Cole on the broadcast. And that takes us to the main event with Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn. I believe it was 10:19 when the video package began, and the bell rang at 10:36. We had like 17 minutes here.
We should also mention the WrestleMania ad, actually.
Yeah, they started to roll out. They realized that, 2005, great campaign. We could do better, and they rolled out their first one with a Joker parody with Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. It was hard to hear Becky's dialogue from inside the arena, but the Seth portion, I thought he was excellent in this. This looked like a really high produced spot, and a series of these that are to come.
Well, they have a lot. They have a pretty high standard to live up to from the prior ones, and I thought this one was of pretty high quality. Getting Seth, the guy who kind of does the weird dancing to replicate the Joker dance on the steps, shot beautifully, and the surprise of having Becky Lynch show up as the man, who was about to enter the man cave. I thought was terrific and funny, and I can't wait to rewatch it. It's we never really kind of saw those ads play out in the age of Twitter. So I think these are going to receive tremendous viral attention from non-wrestling fans as well, and I look forward to them a lot.
So Roman is out first, just with Paul Heyman, and they are just milking this. And then finally, Sami's music hits, and he comes out to a thunderous response from this crowd, and it's a sustained one. They have this crowd in the palm of their hand from the jump.
I would almost say I wondered if they had waited too long before they hit the music for this one, because they had Roman Reigns come out, and then Levesque pretty much said as much in the press conference. You could tell he's the one probably delaying it before.
You could say the second the audience was starting to subside, boom, they hit the music. You could audibly hear the second this audience was just ready to dip, boom, they hit the music. And and understanding what they had, that final segment of SmackDown on Friday, I think that certainly gave you a sense of things. Sami had a lot he wanted to get out in that, but it was also kind of going out there with the understanding, let this crowd ride, and they can control the segment for you, and you just react.
Yeah, they recognized tonight was a very special night, and that this crowd was, as Levesque had said, a character unto itself. I mean, the character of the show. So there are a lot of moments left for the crowd to speak.
So the match began, and I did not think we'd get a Fujita Go Shiozaki tribute off the beginning. It was 4 minutes or something before they locked up. Mm-hmm. So they just, the crowd was into it. Dude, this crowd, they cheered a headlock when Zayn applied it. I mean, they were into everything here. Tope con Hero early on by Zayn, and then a sunset bomb is hit by Zayn, leading to the first of many big near falls for him. Zayn at one point leapfrogged a spear, and as Reigns crashed into the corner, he's rolled up for another 2 count, lands a haluva kick, crowd explodes at the kick out on that one, blue thunder bomb, similar reaction, and then there's elbows to Zayn in the corner with the referee behind them, so the elbows ricochet and take out the referee. From there, with the ref down, Zayn gets the visual cover on Roman Reigns. The crowd is counting, but there's no one there. This is when Jimmy Uso comes out, super kicking Sami and hitting an Uso splash, but Zayn survives that, kicking out and takes out Jimmy with a haluva kick, sending him to the floor. Superman punch is delivered, but misses and hits the ref, and thus, the Kevin Owens the KO chants begin at this point in the match. Then Jay appears, and he gets into the ring. This is one I would certainly like to watch it back for kind of the body language and the interaction with Roman, where he's handed the chair, he's conflicted, and then Reigns starts pie-facing Jay, and Zayn runs at Reigns, who sidesteps, so Zayn mistakenly takes out Jay, and then gets speared by Roman and is pinned.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Again, can't really comment on the body of the match itself because we couldn't really see, but I thought the heat was incredible. I thought they gave Sami the big visionary fall. This crowd was counting, I think, up to 10 or something like that. Several big near falls. You had the big moment with Jay to kind of tell that story, and they kept it so that Jay was still sort of a conflicted semi-heel, semi-babyface. You don't exactly know where his allegiances lie.
This was not like that was the thing. Like if you were, a lot of people kind of mapped this out the same way, and I guess that's where
it was not a straight, reversion back to being a heel for Jey Uso, and they're very much keeping alive the tension between Jey and Roman Reigns, and I'm hoping that they pay that off in a big way in the future as well. But they found a way to build a misunderstanding between Sami and Jey that'll cause conflict between the two of them long enough to do the match at WrestleMania, and then afterwards, I like that it's not like a complete shutting of that relationship. If it was just Jey turning back into a heel. I think that would ruin a lot of like the great sort of interest and depth in a Jey Uso character, and they're very much keeping that alive.
As much as the different different opportunities that have presented themselves throughout the body of this story, I think if you're just looking at it from the beginning of where we're going to go, and then this turn happens, and this is where we get to the match, it's like there's a lot of unforeseen developments throughout this story that have made you pivot at different points. And I would say Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, this interesting chemistry between them, I think there's a huge part of the audience that eventually wants to see those two unite together down the road at some point. That is something you can revisit as well, and you kind of keep that open, at least from this show, and then you set up the Mania match presumably.
Yeah, Slim Sieber in the chat says there were a lot of cutaways to Sami's wife who was ringside. Also, Roman was trash talking her a lot when they were outside. She was great. Yeah, I mean, from what I'd heard, this weekend was kind of significant for, I guess, even a real public acknowledgement that Sami Zayn had a wife and a child, because he seems to keep that side of his very private. But WWE shot like a quick little clip with her, and they probably did that to set up some of those moments tonight that you saw on camera.
Yeah. So Kevin Owens comes out and he attacked Roman, hit him with a stunner, hit Heyman with a stunner, and then it's Roman in the corner, and Owens is looking back at Sami, and he just stands out of the way so that Sami can deliver a haluva kick onto Roman Reigns, and you don't get the big embrace. Owens just leaves the ring as Sami's music plays, and that's how the show ends, with Sami's music, and he's left alone in the ring, and feeling strange.
Yeah, strange, and I would say that's kind of how a lot of people, I'm sure, felt. They leading up to the match, I thought everything was so perfect. Everything was so special. It felt exactly like a GSP Montreal match. To me, it felt like a Conor McGregor match with all the Irish in town. That's kind of like the similar vibe that I had. And it was missing the final moment, and I expected the finish, but in the end, by the time we got there, especially being there live and hearing it, it was very deflating, and it was disappointing for this crowd. And so, I'm left wondering, could they have found a better solution to give them a more significant result? Was there a bigger moral victory to be had that would have created some sort of lasting change in Roman, that Sami could just kind of hang his hat on, while still, not winning the championship? I don't know. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. But I'm certainly left wondering afterwards about what if they pulled the trigger tonight. But hey, man, it tells you how much faith that they have in this, Roman Reigns Cody Rhodes match, and how important it is to them, because they had every reason to change the result, and they did not tonight.
If you had changed the result and you put the title on Sami, what is the WrestleMania match? Is it Sami Cody? Do you involve Roman and make it the three-way? Like, what would be the new direction?
I think there would be a great opportunity to have a 2-night thing. Maybe you do a Roman Sami rematch, first night, Cody second night. There's so many ways that they could have played with it. And ultimately what I was looking for was a solution that would have retained and kind of took advantage of all the incredible goodwill that you built tonight. And I wonder if they did.
To me, there was a middle ground between the argument of, you don't book for the night, you book for the bigger picture. It was like, okay, I don't.
But this is part of the big picture.
Yeah, that's it. This was not an isolated weekend where Sami is only hot for this weekend and Cody's the bigger star in all the other cities. It's like this this is show we have seen the evidence of this lead up that Sami has been a difference maker on TV. Yeah. That this is something that this is a happy accident that Montreal is happening in the midst of it that only magnifies what's already working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You think back to they could have had a disputed finish in the way of like a Rob Van Dam, one night stand 2 finish, where technically it was it was Paul Heyman who made the count, but nonetheless you're kind of left with.
I saw plenty of people predicting the screw job reenactment. I think that would have been the worst finish for this city.
Yeah. Again, dramatically, I this is one I have to rewatch on camera to see like how it played out, because it's a feud in a story that is played so much through the lens of a camera. I loved being there live, but like this is very much like a story, I'm sure, that you have to experience on TV as well. So maybe we'll comment on that on Monday.
Do you want to talk for a few minutes about the press conference?
Sure. Yeah.
So the way these are set up, if you didn't watch the press conference, they had just a handful of talent put out in front of the media. We had Austin Theory, followed by Edge and Beth Phoenix. Pollock came out for a couple minutes, and then Sami Zayn was at the end. I thought Sami Zayn was the most interesting one, and the results vary on these. I don't know what I should necessarily go in expecting from these press conferences. For the first one with Austin Theory, I understand why.
So let's go through some of the content of the press conference itself too. So as John mentioned, Austin Theory was the first one, and essentially this was very much like a New Japan Pro Wrestling backstage press conference where in this case legitimate media would throw out a question, and depending on the source, like they'd be either kind of very character based questions, or they would be somewhere in the middle. But Austin Theory in this case was going to take any sort of question, and he was going to turn it into a promo, and that's kind of what you saw. For me, I just kind of treat it as like, oh, I'm watching improv. I'm watching a chance to see a guy perform. But I know you as a journalist and several other journalists out there would be offended by your participation in this.
It's just and listen, I'm not going to speak for every media source, but it's like I get nothing out of that. It's like there's no value to our listeners for that. There's no value for me personally that I see out of it. Like there's nothing for me to take from that. There's nothing. It's
what I take is how good this guy is coming up with an answer on the fly that is related to his character's motivation.
And listen, I'm not going to fault someone for approaching this. Like this is like he's treating it like this is
practice.
This is WWE content, and that's like what it is. And it's like that's not what I'm there for, but it's like it is what it is. Like you're going to approach this differently. I would say that I think there's a far more effective way for yourself to approach this as a Sami Zayn does, as an Edge does, as a Beth Phoenix does.
I get the sense they leave it up to the performers. Like I feel like I've seen enough of these, and there's enough variation in guys who are treating these as shoots versus people that are using these as in character things, that I feel like they probably give a good deal of autonomy to the performer to decide, as they do like in the interviews that we did on
Nikki Cross.
Thursday.
But what's and it's going to be a different opinion. You can ask 10 people, what do you prefer? Like to me, I think Nikki Cross speaking as her character, I have no interest in that at all. I found it to be a lot more interesting to hear the performer behind the character discussing it.
But some characters, or some performers, I should say, probably just aren't comfortable like talking as themselves. Like they probably aren't used to being in front of a camera speaking as like I don't know what Austin Theory's real name is, but like he's probably at this point so used to just speaking as the character Austin Theory. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, in terms of like our outlet and I guess reporting, this was just, an extension of the show and not really newsworthy whatsoever, except for the challenge, the open challenge, which set up the Edge.
Yeah, they set up the match on Monday.
Yeah. Edge and Beth, so I feel like there's at least been some discussion about made about the media's sort of like ability to make noise at these press conferences.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that? Because Edge came out here and like he was kind of like recognizing the silence and was prompting a reaction, like the way a wrestler would when they walked out to like an empty crowd. What, from your perspective, is should be different about a press conference?
I think that it's. I think that you are not there to act like a fan. You are not there to be. And listen, this is, I think, as much like the performers should not be. They're just trained, and
They have no idea.
I've been to
what a
so
press
many
conference
WWE press
should be.
conferences where they have come out and it's like they are literally calling for that, as like Edge was, and it was just it's not the media's place to be cheering or to even have to be like clapping and applauding. Like we are there to do a job. So it's like I'm not participating in that, but if like others are.
There's a range of media in wrestling, I would say. A lot of them are like, more hardline journalists of your variety, but a lot of people are just coming from this to this as like fans and probably aren't as like, well versed in like what the etiquette should be of an actual journalist, and maybe they don't even care to.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
learn.
It's listen. There are going to be a lot that don't take this stuff as seriously. Maybe I take it too seriously. Like that's people can have that opinion too. But I think like it does. There's a lot of serious topics that you can cover in this, and the fact is like. How many opportunities do you get to speak to a Paul Levesque? Like for me, it's like this is it, and it's 3 questions, and I didn't get called on, which is fine. But I'm not going to feel bad that I'm asking a more serious question because it's like they don't make these people available for serious stories, and then hey, we'll do the circus in this time allotment.
Yeah. This is all to say that like there's a wide varying range of, I think, expectations and answers and even questions when it comes to these WWE and maybe even AEW press conferences. And it's because wrestling is weird. This press conference was weird, but that's because pro wrestling is weird. And especially when you're trying to, talk to people that are sometimes talking as their real selves and sometimes in character. But typically, I felt like this tonight was very much dictated by the performer, whether or not they were in character. And Austin Theories was, but everybody else seemed to not be.
Yeah, I thought you got great answers out of Sami Zayn. Like, and that was just somebody that had just come off this outcome, and you didn't have to parse language. You didn't have to decode. This was someone that obviously he was in the middle of this juggernaut throughout the week in Montreal as being like as close as any pro wrestler in the city could feel as like a mega hometown star as he was this week. He was treated like that, and he knew what was happening going in, and the fact that he felt like this was a deflating moment for this crowd and pretty much conveyed that. And it was almost working it out as he is talking about it to the audience, and the question of it was almost like he didn't say these words, but it's almost, what more do I need to do? What more could be asked of me for this to register with the people where it counts? Like, if ever you're going to make a change in plans, did I not present enough of a compelling case to do so? Because what more could I have done? What more could the city have done? What more could we have drawn for this show that ultimately we had a plan we were locked into? And did we squander something that was incredibly built for these 2 nights? That this audience, you don't get a crowd like this every month. You don't get a crowd like this all that often. And did we reward this audience for what they invested in?
Yeah, I perceived it to be an incredibly like genuine response, like straight from the heart, like not even really thinking about it, because this was a man who had just been through a pretty like special, unusual week that had just moments ago ended. And so he just pretty much said as much. He felt very strange, and he felt very strangely detached. And the word of the night for him was, at least in this press conference, was strange. And you can tell, like, I'm sure there was a level of pride, in everything that he had done up until this point. But I think what you saw on his face in this press conference was doubt. Maybe doubt about whether or not, this was the right decision at the end, for not just his own personal legacy, but just, I think, the business potential of this entire story. So I mean, the weird thing about wrestling is that like through every response, real or fake, you can assess whether or not you like the person more or like the person less. And I think an answer like this for me just kind of continues to build my desire in him as a fan to want to see him win that championship. Seeing his disappointment here.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting if they continue on, like you would assume to see Owens or even Zayn on Monday in Ottawa. Like you would naturally look at that as the follow-up as well, being that you have another day in Canada coming up on Raw as well.
He mentioned how it maybe coincidental that GSP with that GSP was here, because he says the vibe of the weekend was very much to him like a GSP fight, which I mean we had all
which you and me have a unique comparison that we have covered a lot of those fight weeks in Montreal, and I would. We weren't here the whole week like we were for some of those UFC cards, but I totally felt a very similar, like this was the city rallying around their own. And we have seen it in hockey. We have seen it in baseball in this city. We have seen it in professional wrestling going back decades of, from your Grand Prix and All-Stars and even prior to that. And we have seen it in MMA, and that extended to professional wrestling this week.
Yeah. Again, he also mentioned this like one of the turning points of the story for him was August 19th when WWE was here for television, and Roman and Sami were on camera together for the first time, and they immediately saw their chemistry. So man, even way back then. But yeah, I thought he came across really well, even in like speaking. All weekend, all week, I would say. Like any media appearance I've seen of his was very engaging. I think very genuine, and like in a way that it helps that the character he's playing right now is a babyface character that is the underdog, that is unlikely to be chosen for a WrestleMania role. He's actually that guy, and so a lot of his responses, like you even heard tonight, I thought fit very well even in storyline.
He was like he was the guy this week. He was the guy called upon to do all the media, and he did it. And just what we got to see up close and the time he took with people, and I mean, like he hit the ground running, and he knew what he was in store for this week. And from all accounts, like did a very effective job promoting the show and taking all that on this week.
We had Pollock also show up to the presser, and he said tonight was like a mini WrestleMania. He said Montreal was the star of the event. Said they couldn't get enough crowd shots. Largest Montreal gate in history. Numbers that he threw out were 17,271, which
probably a little
wonder, of course, WWE number, and then 15,000 last night.
Even like the legit number was probably right around like 14-ish, which is tremendous. It's tremendous.
Started talking about how tonight was, all about legendary wrestlers from Montreal, like Mad Dog Vachon, and going as far as to say the Hart family and Brett, and he got really choked up as he was talking about Pat Patterson.
Yeah, he brought Pat Patterson several times, and just gave a lengthy speech at the beginning, and then he took a couple of questions.
It's like 3 questions.
Yeah, it was
John tried, but Brandon Thurston did get in.
I was very happy that Brandon got called upon and asked him about the sale, and I mean he kind of punted on it. He was not going to give anything. I was glad he was asked of it.
He said
he tries to stay out of it.
He did say depends on who.
He did say depends on who buys it. Because that is interesting.
But he says he stays out of it.
He did not want any quote maybe assigned to him. But I mean, it's a major question when you look at the fact that is a buyer like Paul Levesque's commitment to this company under a new ownership is very key to this company moving forward. And if this that will be if this company is sold, and for now he can get away with I'm not going to play what if games because it hasn't happened yet. But if the company is sold and it's either we want this structure in place and we want you heading creative, or we don't want you heading creative. Does Paul want to do it in a different? It's no longer the family business. It's now owned by a major media conglomerate, a Saudi Arabian investment fund. It's a different company. And how does he fit into that? And does he want to fit into that?
I mean, unless there was significant intervention from a certain father-in-law of his, I wouldn't see why anybody wouldn't want, Levesque to continue to be in charge of creative. I mean, from all accounts, critically, I think that the show has been better. Business has been just as good, So what reason would somebody have?
You're like you had the Hollywood Reporter story recently, like Vince being a sticking point for some. Like that is, this was definitely in like my like line of questions was, the original conversation, the response to Vince McMahon in late December was the board of directors believing now is not the time, that this would not be in the company's best interest for you to come back. And early January, that is flipped, and suddenly you have the board shakeup, and it's a unanimous vote for Vince to return as executive chairman. How has that been met with those within the company? That'd be an interesting question. What has the change been for Paul's professional relationship with Vince McMahon since he's back as the executive chairman? Is he leaning on you during the sales talks? Is it church and state between you two that he is handling this and you are on the ground producing the show? Like, is there less conversation about business between you two right now? But anyway, yes, the stock went up as Vince came back in and you had the thoughts of a sale. But if Vince McMahon is going to price this thing beyond what a lot of companies are willing to spend, if Vince McMahon is holding back others from feeling, do we want to get into this business? If Vince McMahon is a turnoff for us, was it ever an idea of Vince McMahon coming back? Should we address the elephant in the room in a more public fashion that does give us like that we wholly do not condone like what has happened here? Will that affect people in the whole sale talks? Like there's tons of questions that you can bring about it, and Paul Levesque is very much in the middle of all of that.
At this point, I think we should go to some of your calls. And first of all, we have a couple super chats here. First of all, from Rob McDonald, who says, where do you think Gunther goes for WrestleMania?
Gunther, it's a good question.
And also, he would love to see Gunther versus Edge.
Gunther and Edge. I mean,
story-wise, I don't think that. I mean,
Sheamus and Drew, like that could all fit into something.
So yeah, well, I guess it's a question about Edge first of all. I mean, was tonight enough revenge for the Beth Phoenix attack and the whole Edge Judgment Day story?
It to me left you with. It did not create the instant demand for that match beyond. I mean, you can do it in one promo. That's like, we've been feuding for a year. It's time to have the last showdown of some sort, and boom, you have your match. But I wouldn't have done the finish tonight if that was my direction. To me, it was, you could have easily had Rhea pin Beth, and that just further heats up Rhea, and then Edge has a reason to come back for revenge, and he should be the one cutting that promo that it's time for the final showdown, rather than the heel in Balor doing that.
Right.
So,
but if it's not Balor, I think anybody versus Gunther sounds pretty good, but especially Edge. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like they're probably going to do Gunther versus Brock or Lashley at this point. So, I like the suggestion. So, thank you for that. And let's now go to our first call of the night. And this comes to us from Muggin. We're going to try this to see if the audio works. Muggin, can you say hi to us?
What's up?
Hey, great. We can hear you. Awesome. How'd you like Elimination Chamber?
Montreal brought it. They brought it. Like it was a strong show, and they elevated it.
Yeah.
And let's start from the beginning. Sami Zayn was the star. He was the star of this whole show, and like the atmosphere was just like it gave Money in the Bank 11 a run for its money. Yeah, wow. Roman getting that type of heat because man, Roman getting booed out of the building, like he was getting reacted like he was booked as the Antichrist, and he was booked as the Antichrist in that match. And I love the way it was laid out. I mean, the ref bumps were a little excessive, especially after the second time. And I gotta say, like, I mean, I gotta give the powers that be credit for pulling enough strings to get Jimmy and Jay over the border, and especially Jay, because
I don't think Jay was ever in doubt.
Yeah, and Jimmy was. I'm sure Jimmy kept his nose clean ever since his last DUI. And anyway, I love how they structured it with because it felt like to me like Sami accidentally spearing Jay as opposed to Jay succumbing to Roman's abuse is a much better outcome and at least even more doubt over what's going to happen. And I thought that was a much better outcome than just Jay making a decision because at this point he's still torn and of course the bloodline are as a whole are still tattered because of what Sami did at the Royal Rumble. But yeah, the atmosphere was perfect. It was an amazing match. And of course, and then the post match with Kevin, yeah, him and Sami are not all the way there yet because they still got like 6 weeks to go until Mania, and I do think that will be the direction for night one. And I'll make the argument that that Usos versus Owens and Zayn will be the main event for night one.
Are you going to Raw?
I mean, listen, I will go to the next one if it keeps going because. I kind of wish I got tickets, but I mean I will go to the next one, that's for sure. And going down the rest of the card, the men's chamber match was excellent. Montez Ford broke out. Johnny Gargano got the performance he needed. Bronson Reed was booked like a monster because it took like three guys to like get rid of him. The Logan Paul reveal was expected because at least WWE isn't shying away from Logan being a natural heel because they're finally putting him in the right spot for his match with Seth in WrestleMania. And the mixed tag match ended the way I thought it would because Edge pinning Balor was the way to go because Rhea is getting because I knew win or lose Rhea was gonna go to WrestleMania anyway to face Charlotte since she won the Royal Rumble. And I love that she didn't get pinned because she got protected as a result of that. And now Rhea can move on to more important things. Whereas Edge and Balor can finally tie up the loose ends there. And the women's chamber match was easy to predict. I mean, Asuka, of course, was she was the odds-on favorite, and as predictable as it sounds, she's absolutely the right choice to face Bianca Belair. And this was such a strong show that not even the Lesnar Lashley finish brought it down. I mean, it was. I took the leap and I ordered the network today. Like I took the leap because that's how much.
Thank you, Muggin. Thank you, Muggin, for the call as always, and talk to you soon. Appreciate it. Let's go up next to Hansi, who was also in attendance tonight. Hansi, it was nice to see you briefly.
Yeah, nice to see you guys too, man. It was pretty fucking cool. I'll keep it quick because my internet connection in my hotel is not really the greatest. So I'll just say, disappointing kind of ending. I thought, meaning that like I knew it was going to happen, but I think after it was done, like I think people had that feeling that maybe you should have called an audible, like the Brock Lesnar Eddie Guerrero thing. And I kind of can agree, and we'll see down the line how they handle it. I thought it was going to be handled a lot better, at least. 'Cause I thought, like Pollock was saying, I was waiting for the hug and all that kind of stuff. But I got to see how they get to the tag match. But I got to say the atmosphere for this was probably one of the biggest heat-getting matches I've ever seen. Like, just simple I like the simple stuff of what everything they did. You know what I mean? That's the kind of environment that I want for a main event. And I'll say the two chamber matches were probably my favorite matches. Everything else was just kind of there, but it was a hot crowd for the SmackDown and for Elimination Chamber. I'll give a shout out to Sheamus and Drew on SmackDown. That was like one of my that could have been a pay-per-view if they wanted to, but anyways, I'll just say with the call, looking forward to Mania season, and I'll see where it goes. But I liked your guys' review. It was good seeing you guys, man. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. Peace out.
Hansi, what was the vibe like leaving the arena? Did you get a sense of how people felt after the show?
Oh, yeah, no, people were still live. It wasn't as lively as on after SmackDown, right? But people were still like kind of lively, but they weren't as lively. Like after SmackDown, everyone was like ready for a raw victory basically. But like it was a little bit more deflated during this time though. But it wasn't like that bad. But people are still hyped up for it. But I'll say it wasn't compared to when I was leaving SmackDown. Everyone was more hyped then though.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, thank you, Hansi, as always, for the call and safe travels back home.
You too, guys. Peace out.
Thanks,
Hansi. We got one more super chat here from Slim Sieber, who sends $5. Thank you for the support, Slim. He says, when do you think they shoot the angle where Ray decides to fight his son? It seems the heat had kind of died down a bit for that. Great show, guys.
I mean, it doesn't have to be this week, but I would say you want to get that one going pretty soon. And I think you have to. You're not just announcing the match. There has to be a bit of Ray finally hitting the breaking point to be willing to fight his son. Like you want to tell that story that there's one final step that Dominic takes that finally father is willing to fight son, which you have time. Like you can set that one up. Like the build has been done and now it is just getting to the finish line.
Yeah. Are we certain that that's going to be a one-on-one match? I mean, I think with Cena, I talked about the possibility of maybe pairing Edge with Ray and Dom versus Dom and Priest or somebody else. Do you have to peak that at WrestleMania, or does it have life beyond it?
You could always extend till Father's Day in June.
Father's Day. Wow.
If you could make it to then. The fact that they are putting more emphasis on Ray's mask of late between the Rumble attack and then, exchanging masks with Santos Escobar. Like that seems to
be... That could be the pair. That could be the team.
It's like Dominic has not been growing this awful mullet for no reason. And I think Dominic putting his hair on the line against Ray's mask and Dominic getting his head shaved. I mean, he would be tremendous doing that whole bit where he gets his head shaved and, that's one way to go.
Yeah, no matter what, I'm assuming we'll have a very clear direction, maybe even as soon as tomorrow, with the Judgment Day's appearance. So tomorrow in Ottawa is a big show. We have a few pieces of feedback from forum.postwrestling.com from all of our Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. First, we got a Saeed from Vancouver who says, interesting ending to some matches. I didn't enjoy the ending to Brock and Bobby. Seems like that will continue, so unsure where that puts Bray after his SmackDown promo. Fun Elimination Chamber matches for the men and women. Glad they made Reed look like a threat, taking 7 super kicks and 3 finishers to stay down. The main event ending was interesting. The crowd didn't seem to have a reaction at all. Even for KO, they showed shots of the crowd just standing there. We didn't get anything for Jay, but from what it looks like, they are not going to the tag team option at Mania. I don't know why you would say it doesn't look like that. I at least from what I could see,
I don't know how you get to a different conclusion than that.
I mean, he attacked Jay,
he came to the aid of, against both the Usos like that. I don't know what other direction you would go in.
Yeah, and as far as the lack of reaction, I mean, I think there's still a lot of disappointment. Honestly, at that point, even if they hugged, I don't know if that would have been enough consolation for a moment. This
it was like the air was out of the sails with the loss, and maybe as well in the way the loss was done, where it was he misses the attack and nails Jay, and then boom, it's a spear that puts him down. It's tough. You're beating the hometown hero in front of a crowd that was so hungry for him to win. There's not a whole lot of ways to polish that one. It's tough.
Let's go up next to B. Weza from Chicago, who says, pretty disappointing to have 3 of the 6 matches end with shenanigans. That sucked the life out of the matches. I get it, future storytelling, and also, damn, that's half of your show. So what do we have? Brock and Lashley? Yeah, I would say that. I guess
if you're lumping in the main event as that kind of an ending,
the main event, I don't know. You knew that was going to end with something. I mean, it's such a story-heavy match story that I wasn't disappointed. I would have been disappointed if Jey Uso didn't show up. If Kevin Owens didn't show up till the end. But anyway, what was the other one? Was Beth and
that one was relatively clean.
Was that so? What was the other shenanigan match? That would have been the only other one, right? Oh, Logan Paul. Yeah, but I wouldn't even call Logan Paul disappointment.
That was for a storyline direction. I had no problem with that. You don't beat Seth for no reason.
And I think Logan Paul was like a celebrity surprise that would have satisfied.
Which is a lot of times people just want to see a big moment in and we'll take that in lieu of a finish even. And Logan Paul was enough. And that was their thinking too. That Brock and Lashley, just doing all the stuff after the match, that would be enough to pacify your audience. But it was a weak finish.
Both EC chambers felt well-paced and had some impressive spots, allowing each star to shine, especially the men's EC match. The main event vibe lived up to the hype, but as the match went on, it felt overbooked and like it lost momentum. By the time KO came out, it felt like it had little impact or consequence. I will continue to be excited to see whether Sami Bloodline story goes. And also, I'm feeling a little bit deflated after that one. Curious to know how it felt in the arena and the streets after the show. Hope you guys had a blast. Thanks for all the coverage this weekend.
Oh, the streets were dead by the time we got out of the
Streets
arena.
were cold and wet. Montreal has not been fun to walk around. It's normally like a beautiful city, but they certainly picked like an awful time to do a pay-per-view. But anyway, it's a beautiful city otherwise. Brandon from Oshawa says, I'm over the finisher spam matches that always happen in Brock Lesnar matches. I need something different, and I hope we get a triple threat with Brock, Lashley, and Bray. I need to see Brock and Lashley interacting with the Funhouse and the Puppets and Uncle Howdy.
Sure.
That'll be an interesting combination.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Both chamber matches were great. The end of the main event was a bit deflating for me. I thought tonight was the night to have Jay cement himself with the Bloodline. I do like that Owen still was skeptical of Sami, but I did want the hug after what felt like a disappointing finish. I predict you get the hug tomorrow. What do you think in Ottawa?
In Ottawa?
Yeah.
Wrong place to do it.
Why?
Just means more to end this show. This show needed.
Oh, you mean this?
If you
this
believe
show.
that was enough, that would be a big moment, then you should have given the big moment in lieu of a title change here. Like
Right.
at the very least, Montreal, it makes a whole lot more sense. No offense to Ottawa.
And finally, we go to Will from Toronto, who says, we all knew how this show would end, but it was a fun ride regardless. I do feel really bummed, even though I expected the loss.
A lot of that attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting with like Sami Zayn in the press conference saying, we all know what this is. Basically, he was saying, we all know that this is scripted, that this is fake. But then he also said, some of it is real, you know, like, or at least, you know, the emotions attached to it, I think for him especially are real. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's disappointment, but you know what, sports can be disappointing. It's a bit of a replication of real life.
Do you have any different answer about how you feel Cody is met on Monday in Ottawa?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Coming off of this finish.
They did such a good job on Monday of like, you know, positioning Cody as sort of like almost like a surrogate, you know, to get revenge on Roman if Sami couldn't do it. That I don't expect the crowd to turn on Cody, you know. Do we see Sami Zayn even tomorrow?
I would put Sami on Raw. I would put him in front of that Canadian audience. And maybe it's a week where Cody goes to SmackDown to address Roman or something like that. If you have that concern, and maybe it's not a realistic concern, given that, you know, Cody has been pretty bulletproof in all of this.
We'll get a star reaction. Shout out Nate Milton in the chat room who says props to Sami, but this is hashtag Devontae season.
Cody
Yes,
Devontae Rhodes.
If I could hit the drop right now, Nate, I would. But thank you, Nate, for being here. Yeah.
All right. Is that all we've got?
That's all we've got.
All right. Closing words. Thanks to everybody that checked out any of our work over the last couple of days on the site, the interviews we did on YouTube, and those that we got to see here in person in Montreal. It means a lot when anyone comes up and says hello to us, whether you are from Denmark or from Toronto or all parts in between that we got to hang out with. And thanks as always, Wei, for all of your work amidst shower issues, shoe problems.
I sound like the biggest baby.
No, it's
podcast, I'm sure.
Listen.
No, thank you, John. You know, always fun to work with you, and especially to travel and to share a room. You know, and
can I say that you can see the background? Can you here? So this is a 2-bedroom setup here, and they called me a week ago and said, "Hey, we would be able to upgrade your room for free." I said, "Oh, okay. What comes with the upgrade?" Well, it would be you would have a king size bed instead of 2 queen size beds. I said, 2 king size beds? No, 1 king size bed. I was like, wait a minute, there's 2 of us.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, that's not an upgrade. That's not happening.
No.
And I had to explain this. And then they said, okay, so you want the original room? Yes. And that's when they put us into the dreaded room with the awful shower. So that's probably my fault.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not your fault. I think this is still a better option than a king size bed. As much as you know, I like spending time with you. I think that would be a little too much.
On that note, we are going to sign off. I think we're in the midst of Tanahashi and Okada. Won't give out the result, but it sounds like some great reviews for Kyrie and Mercedes Moné. So,
oh really? Okay.
You can check all that out. Battle in the Valley post show will be out Sunday. PostWrestlingCafe.com with Karen Peterson and WH Park. If I can get my internet going, we'll have a UFC report up on the site from Eric Marcotte with the Aaron Blanchfield win over Jessica Andrade. And a big thank you to Neil Flanagan and Andrew Thompson holding down the fort on the site all night, all weekend long. Great work from them as well.
WrestleNomics out tomorrow from Brandon, talking, I'm sure, a whole lot about his experience at
yes, a hotel cast
Elimination.
from Brandon Thurston.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So look for that on the Post Wrestling feed, also at WrestleNomics.com. And Long and Winding Road is out right now with WH Park and John Cena talking about Rob Van Dam versus Dan Crawford. So if you're looking for a bit more wrestling to watch late at night, check that out. PostWrestling.com.
All roads lead to PostWrestling.com. Wai and I will be back in Toronto Monday night after Raw. So we will speak with you.